everybody. Welcome back. My name is Deborah Peters, and thank you for tuning into the Deborah Peters Show. It's absolutely grateful to have you here. I really want to say thank you to everyone that comments and subscribes and shares this show with their families and their colleagues. It's really what makes the channel grow. And we're on every major podcast platform. We live broadcast every Tuesday at 12 noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern on LinkedIn, YouTube, and my Facebook business page. And then the recordings go up on all the major podcast platforms that you can think of, from iTunes to Rumble and Spotify and SoundCloud and all the rest. So thank you for being here. Just a little bit about the show. I created this show. It's my second podcast that I've had. The first one I had was this was a show that went new and noteworthy on iTunes in the first 2 weeks. So it tells me that people are really interested in learning about how to make the shifts and changes in their lives and their businesses that they desire. They're not just wishing for it, they're actually seeking information. And I have a 20 plus year background in human engineering and as a business strategy coach and a professional speaker. I've done programs in 19 countries, and I've worked with a plethora of businesses, mostly CEOs of small to mid-sized companies in a wide variety of industries. And I've seen so much and experienced so much going through those processes with those clients that it really has led me to this point that, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about consciousness. It's about our ability or our desire, really. It's a desire. The desire comes before the ability to raise our consciousness into a higher level of self-awareness so that we can really understand how our thoughts are producing our experiences and how our emotions are triggering us to either feel deflated or empowered. And so that's what this show is all about. And we cover 5 main pillars: health, wealth, relationships, self-expression, and business. And with the business side of things, you know, we've got a lot going on with AI and all kinds of new tech. And I felt like it's really important to bring on my next guest and have him share with us some of the things that he experiences and creates for his clients to navigate like this whole world of social media and online platforms when maybe you think it doesn't apply to you. I was talking to a diesel mechanic company today, and they just are like, yeah, we don't need that. We do everything word of mouth and everything's working great. Well, maybe you don't think you need it, but maybe there's so much about it that you don't know that would enable you to make new choices. So Chris, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Deborah. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, and you're from Wisconsin.
I am.
Yeah. The land of the cheese.
Yeah, soon to be the land of the cold in a few months. So we're just enjoying the last little bit of summer here.
I bet it's been beautiful. I've always wanted to, like, you hear so much about the great summers there, the long extended days, the beautiful lakes, and yeah, always wanted to visit.
Yeah, you know, people think it's cold, but we do experience the full effect of all 4 seasons. Tomorrow it'll be 98 degrees. So we do get heat. As much as some people probably don't believe that. And then in about 4 months or more, it'll be in the 30s. And then we've seen as much as 40 below. So we get all of it.
I grew up like that. You know, it's fascinating when you grow up in those kinds of climates, how resilient it makes you, where you can just pretty much handle anything. I mean, our houses, like, for example, had to be insulated for 40 below weather, and maybe with a wind chill, it might be 60 below. And then in the summer, sometimes it was like 95, 100, 110. It was like these extreme temperatures that you just adapt, you know, it makes you really resilient.
It's funny. People here complain about it being humid at 84. And obviously people in Florida are like, oh, you have no idea. But then us Wisconsinites go to Florida for spring break and we're walking around with t-shirts and flip-flops. It's 55 degrees and people think that's freezing cold. And we're like, oh, this is nice and warm.
Yeah. I remember the first time I went to Florida in the winter from my previous climate. And it was probably like January, like you were saying. And I saw all these stores with coats. And I'm like, why would you need a coat in Florida? Like, it's just phenomenal here. But you acclimate, right? So tell us a little bit about what you're experiencing in today's market in terms of social media changes. I know AI is a big thing. What else is going on?
Yeah, AI is really big. I think that so much of marketing is change. And we see every single day from different reports we get from industry articles that there's a platform or algorithmic change on, could be Google, could be Facebook, could be any platform. And that has people, even though this has been happening forever, that has people in a bit of a tizzy. And so the average business, when I say average business, I mean mom and pop shops, small businesses, solopreneurs, small businesses, they all feel very overwhelmed by social media. And more than ever, I'm getting the vibe and the feedback that they just don't like social media anymore. And part of it is, yes, there's negativity on platforms. The other part is it just feels like it doesn't work anymore for them. And I get where they're coming from, but the truth is it does work and it works very well. They're just not doing it right. They're not doing it well. And so that warrants a much longer conversation. But the things that I tell them is that whether it be advertising or TikTok or YouTube shorts, all these new emerging trends work and they work exceptionally well. It's just that the reason most of them don't work for most of them is that A, they're either not strategic, or B, they're what I call a toe dipper. So they say, oh, I tried Facebook ads, didn't work. Oh, I tried TikTok, I posted a video, didn't work. And the sample size isn't big enough. They weren't really committed. They dipped their toe rather than jumping in the deep end and saying, you know what, I'm going to swim in this pool for a half hour, for a couple of days, and I'm just going to get used to it. And that's the big thing, is that there's always going to be changes. There's always going to be disruptions. And I think that the narrative is you just have to be an early adapter. And if you're not willing to be an early adapter, you're going to end up coming late to the party. So the best example is I had friends starting to post on TikTok 5 years ago. They could post a video and they might come to work the next day and they might have 150,000 views because there wasn't a bazillion creators.
Sure.
Now everybody's on the platform trying to do the same thing. Your chance of that virality is long gone because everybody's at the party now. So it's so important that we try things in today's day and age, because if you try them and you make a commitment, you'll probably learn what's going to work, what's not going to work. You'll have that chance of virality, which is still hard to come by, but you have to evolve and you have to learn. And if you're not willing to do that, you're going to end up being invisible. And that's what I see is a big problem with so many small businesses today, is they're either scared, they're invisible, and they're just not willing to adapt and to evolve. And so it warrants a much longer conversation, but all of this stuff is a lot easier than we really make it.
You know, it's interesting. Marketing is a marathon. It's
Absolutely
not a sprint. And I'm working with a physician group right now that are launching a new spa. And I said that to them a few times, that, you know, first of all, they're what you said. I don't want to do this. I don't like social media. I don't understand it, like all of the usuals. And then they finally came to the realization that they really have to. And I think, you know, whether you like it or not, it's a tool. So, you know, you look at the tool and you roll with the tool. It's like, if you want your body to change, you have to change your relationship with food, and you have to change your relationship with your body. And yeah, maybe you don't like vegetables, but you know, if you want your body to be a certain way, and maybe you don't like lifting weights or exercising. But if you want your body to be a certain way, there's a certain approach to that when you use that approach, you get the results. So something's got to give. It's either your attitude about marketing or it's your willingness to run the marathon and recalibrate as you go.
You're right. I actually put that in my contracts that this is a marathon and not a sprint. And I ask my clients verbally, I say, I need you to commit to this for 3 months or more. Yeah. And the question usually comes, well, why? And I said, I'm not asking you to sign a contract. I'm asking you to commit at least 3 or more months, because whether you hire me or another agency or anybody, there's a couple weeks of onboarding. And during that time, you create a strategy, you get to know the client, you have some meetings, you mock up some content, you have some approvals, you start to build some traction, clients and followers start to notice a difference. And then it's going to take you a few months to start to build up followers, build up traction, engagement, drive traffic, because you can't drive traffic on your first couple of posts, right?
Right.
So it is a marathon, and it takes, I mean, when I talk about toe dipping, that's typically what happens is like, oh, I tried a Facebook ad. Well, how much did you spend? Well, I spent $5 a day for 2 days. Okay, well, that is not going to work. I can exactly tell you, it doesn't matter how good the ad is. Or I posted a video on TikTok and I only got like 100 views. Okay, that was one video and it probably wasn't very good. So I go back to this so often. I host a virtual or in-person marketing event here every year, a big summit that has about 220 attendees. In the last 2 years, while I'm speaking on stage, I asked the audience, show of hands, how many people have a strategy? And maybe 15 people raised their hand. And I said, okay, keep your hand up if you have a documented strategy that you could print off or you have it on your desk somewhere. And we're talking about 7 people had their hand raised still. And I just basically said, if you're not strategic with anything, you're not going to have consistency. How do you know what your budget is? Well, you probably don't have a budget. How do you know what you're supposed to be posting about? How do you know what your KPIs are? Are you measuring? Well, obviously not. You're essentially just throwing things against the wall. And if you think about any major sports, professional sports team, whether it be NBA, professional tennis, soccer, whatever, they don't go into a game without a game plan, right? That would just be crazy.
Playbook.
But yet so many people do that with marketing and they wonder why things don't work. Like, oh, well, I don't want to do TikTok because I don't want to be on video. Well, like you said about the food example, there are some things in marketing that are non-negotiable, like advertising. You have to advertise on most platforms because organic reach is around 5%. So if you're not willing to do that, I can already tell you, you are going to have a slower rate of growth than other businesses who are willing to. Also with video, if you're not willing, which is one of my non-negotiables, I'll say fine, but just know that your rate of growth is going to be substantially behind the average business. And so, excuse me, fighting a head cold here.
No,
if you can be strategic, if you can have video consistently and have an ads budget, there are some other things in there as well. You will have a very good rate of growth over time. And as you run that marathon, you'll see every month get better and better and better. The downside, and as you alluded to this with the food example, was it could take you a year or even 2 years to see a massive transformation in your marketing. Because just like looking at your body, yes, you can lose 10 pounds and you might say, okay, I got some progress here. But if you want to get to that goal of 50 pounds and you want to get tone and have a six pack, I mean, you're lucky if that takes 6 months. I mean, that's going to take a year to 2 years for some people. And
that's a journey.
Exactly.
And also too, I feel that in marketing, the individual or the company leadership needs to go through a transformation in terms of how they view their company in the marketplace. It's an attitude. It's like I was talking about the diesel mechanic where, things have been very archaic, the way the company is even set up. Nobody has their own email address. People don't have their own extension to their phone, and you just call this one main number and ask for the person. Well, that was great when you only had 3 people, but now you have like 22 people. It's a little archaic, and that's a mindset, and that mindset then bleeds into how they address marketing and their willingness to even try something new for long enough to be able to give it a chance to provide results. Everything has a gestation period. You know, you look at animals giving birth, right? Like, I don't know, a human is 9 months. I think a horse is 12, and what are rabbits, like 6 weeks? I mean, there's a gestation period to everything. You have to give it an opportunity to go from the seed to the plant to the flowering to the fruit.
Great example. I love that. I get that question a lot, which is there'll be a younger person in a marketing role, and they'll be reporting to the owner of the company or president, some kind of executive, and they'll say, this individual, typically men, is not really all in on digital marketing. Like, we have a very small budget, small team. We need this, we need that. How do I go about getting them on board? And the problem is that a lot of the older executives, they choose to consume media a certain way. So yes, there are still people out there that choose to consume media by newspaper, magazine, TV, and radio. Believe it or not, there's still a big audience for that. Not big, but there's still a small audience, I should say. And if that's how you consume your media, that is likely how you think your company should do marketing.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There is a time and a place for billboards and print media, although I would say it should be a very small fraction of your budget. So what I tell those individuals is that you have to illustrate a picture. So you have to understand, why is it that they don't want to run digital ads? Why are they scared or afraid, or what do they think is the worst that could happen? And then what I want them to do is I want them create a picture. This could be going into Canva or somewhere and mocking up some a strategy. It could be some content. And then I want you to find another business in your industry. It could be slightly out of the industry, but somewhat related. So if it's automotive, maybe it's something a little bit distant, and show them the results that another company is generating results with. So for example, you might find another automotive business that's doing what you want to do. I might call them, send them a couple emails, and just say, hey, I really appreciate what your company's doing. I'm trying to get my company to do something simpler. I'd love to just have a 15-minute conversation so I could ask you a couple questions. And then I'd like to ask you about your results. And then I would go back to my boss and I'd say, look, I've mocked some stuff up. I didn't spend a lot of time, but I want to have the opportunity to change your mind. And when you go into a boss or a stakeholder with that mentality, they say, okay, I'll listen to you. And if you can say, look, XYZ company, who's also an automotive, invested $5,000, but they had a 100% return on investment. Right. And they found all these new customers, and it was so easy. And you say, hey, this is my mock-up. This is what I'm proposing. I don't want 10. I only want $5,000. And if you think that's palatable, but you have to present it on a platter where it's so easy they can't say no. And
because there's an ROI.
Exactly. That's hard for maybe a young person who's 22 years old and only in their career for a couple of years. Yeah. But you have to present it, because it's unlikely you're the only company in your industry doing this digital thing that you want your company to do. And so we have to, one is mindset, but to get that mindset, you have to understand their pain points. And that's a big thing that I do. And then I'll basically paint the picture like, look, this is easy. And like I said before, I really believe that most of this stuff is a lot easier than we make it. But we as entrepreneurs have a tendency to think about the negatives and what people are going to say. Sure. And, well, people aren't going to be interested in me. But ultimately, you just got to start shooting arrows. And then you can start to hone in your aim a little bit later, which takes me back to the book, Ready, Fire, Aim. Title of the book says it all. You just got to start shooting arrows and then start refining your process. And I think that that's the big thing.
It's huge. And again, a lot of what you said does come down to the mindset of the leadership. If you've got this, well, my favorite saying is, the mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. And
I
so
love that.
right. So you've just got to you have to open up to other possibilities that you haven't considered yet. And what's interesting is in the time we're living in right now, where change is faster than it's ever been. It's lightning speed, and it's going to continue to speed up. Having a fixed mindset is, it's a death sentence really for your business. You have to be willing to look at the possibilities and to, like you said, make a minimum commitment. I do that with my coaching programs too. It's only I'm like, I want to see 6 months from you, because change doesn't happen overnight. And I'm not going to set you up to be disappointed in this coaching process. You need to be committed, and that's going to require some skin in the game. Because if people don't have any skin in the game, then they blame it on somebody else all the time, right?
Always.
It's either you, the coach, or it's the platform, or anything but them. And so we're past that now. Humanity's grown. The consciousness of humanity is beyond that. You really have to be accountable to what you're putting out there and what you're not putting out there. It's just equally as dangerous to not put your company out there as it is to put something negative out there.
Yeah, and the thing I say to that, to a lot of people is, you can't run a business scared. And a lot of people don't want to hear that from me, but I do say that. And then oftentimes when they're not willing to jump on YouTube or TikTok or whatever it might be, I'm not saying you have to be on TikTok, but
Right.
by not being out there, you're invisible. And by being invisible, how can you expect new eyeballs and new prospects to find you? Whether
Yeah.
that be building a new website or branching out to social or starting a podcast, you are limiting yourself to the possibility of people discovering you and your brand. And when I say that, I also mean your personal brand, because I have a big presentation slide deck that is specifically labeled "Your Business Starts with Your Personal Brand." So
Mhm.
maybe not so much for the diesel mechanic, but maybe for an aspiring entrepreneur who's a author or wants to public speak. You
Well,
have to
well, I don't
put
know. Like,
yourself
let me
out there.
jump in there. So, like, the diesel mechanic has an amazing story. When he started out, his garage didn't even have a cement floor.
Wow.
And he was working by himself with one guy, one part-time guy. And now he has, 22 people, and they're building a parts center, and the slabs just went down. And he has a great story that could be so inspiring to the world, much less people in his industry. But if he's not online talking about it, nobody's going to gain any benefit from it.
So that's the thing is, what one of the things I would tell this individual is, look, your story and your success is so good that, we could basically put you out there. You could get paid to speak on stages. Now, he might dismiss that, but if you said, look, there are entrepreneurs getting paid $10 to $25,000 to show up at an event. Would you be willing to do that? Fly to nice destinations, go to corporate gigs, potentially write a book, but painting that picture, you could say, yeah. And then guess what happens after that? You franchise your business. You go from trying to 2x your business to 10x or 50x your business. So, but that person needs to have the growth mindset to say,
Yeah.
what are the logical next steps for me and my business? But if he is the face of his business, if he really wants to create a personal brand, which, by the way, your business starts with your personal brand,
Yeah.
that will then escalate his business brand. So he could simultaneously be making just as much money from public speaking, publishing a book, to his business growing, and then franchising his business. If you really get creative and if you want to jump outside the box, there's so much you can do. But when you have this limited mindset, it becomes very troubling. And I just want to introduce this one thing. I wrote this book a long time ago. It's partially about about golf, but it's called King of the Mental Swing: How to Win at Golf and Life by Thinking Differently. And one of the things that I say is that you choose to think, walk, talk, and act a certain way. So as I sit here in my chair, I'm not slouched back with my arms crossed. I'm kind of up, forward, in, my back is arched. I'm very engaged in the conversation. But if I was this way, you'd probably look like I wouldn't want to be here, right? So I'm choosing to have good posture, inflections in my voice. I'm choosing to think very positively about the weather and the outlook today. And even though I'm sick, it's just a head cold. Tomorrow, hopefully, I'll be
That's
better for my
right.
golf match. And so that's a choice I can make rather than seeing everything as being a negative. And when you do that, I think you actually change your circumstances.
Well, you change
There,
your energy, so then your in total environment responds to that shift in energy.
yeah, yeah, and it kind of goes back to the CTFAR model, but ultimately everything starts with the way you think, which is your mindset. And then
Yeah.
that starts to change your behaviors, changes your actions, changes the outcome, which then changes the circumstance. And so it's just so interesting that if we have that mindset, all of a sudden this diesel mechanic is going to start to think, well, shoot, maybe I should have a LinkedIn profile and maybe I should be creating some YouTube shorts a couple times a week. And then maybe I should start to talk about this inspirational message, how I went from 0 to 60 and how now, like, hey, there's another 60 to achieve over here too. And you start to see that there are opportunities all around us,
Mhm.
personally and
It's
professionally. It's
endless.
but are you opening your mind, like you said, to see them, choose to see them? Because some of us choose to have blinders on because we're nothing but negative and we don't have that growth mindset.
Well, I think for some people, it's a product of their programming and conditioning early in life.
Yep, no doubt.
Um, that's probably like we give that 100%. And then I think it's also the environment that they're in.
Sure.
I've traveled the world and worked in different countries and cities, and there's nothing worse than a comfort zone. Like, this is comfortable. I'm just
Yep.
gonna like do this, be here. I don't want to, cause myself any discomfort to make any sort of changes. And but those people aren't our client base. Like, at least not ours. Like, we're looking for the hungry people, or at least the slightly curious people that are like, yeah, I wanna get into this. Tell me more.
Yeah, you have to be curious, but you talked about environment, and I grew up even younger, graduating college. I had a lot of energy zombies around me, and as I met the woman that became my wife, she said, like, you can love from a distance, right? You can
Hmm.
care about someone, but choose not to have them in your close circle, and that kind of opened my eyes because it's like, yeah, you can still be kind, you can still connect with people, but you can also change the narrative. Like, you can say to someone like, look, I
Always.
don't appreciate when you talk like that. Like, I don't love the energy. Or if you can never change these people, and there are a couple people like that in my life, I just, you kind of
Yeah.
keep them at arm's length. And that's a choice. It's hard to do, but over time, now I look back at some of those people that I thought were great friends. My life is better for it because you will find other people that only make you better, and that we can change it. I know it's not easy, but when you do that, it is amazing how your mindset changes, your attitude changes, and it just feels like there's so much more positivity. But it doesn't take much for people to bring you down. Just like it also doesn't change much, and sometimes it's subliminally because we don't recognize it, for people to bring you up when there's more energy in the room. And so I'm very conscious about that,
Yeah.
and I think other people should be too. Just like in a culture you work for, people you hire, you got to have those growth mindset, optimistic type people around you.
And be that person. I always tell people, if those are the kinds of people you want in your life, then be that person. I remember I was speaking at a sales event in Oakland for Epson America, and there was a lady in the audience, put up her hand at the end of my speech, and she said, "So," everybody laughed, but she was serious. She's like, "So, how do you find a husband?" And I said, "Well, do you know what you want in a husband?" And she said, "Yeah, absolutely." And my question was, are you that person? Because if you're that person's going to come and mirror you. Now, you could also meet people that would mirror parts of you that are cranky and judgmental and all these other things, or you could become the person that you seek to have in your life, and then that person can come along and mirror those traits to you. And I think that comes out in our marketing. You know, if we're
It does.
that high and not high energy bouncing off the wall, but high energy, high vibrational in our approach to life. It's like, this isn't a problem, this is an opportunity, you know. This isn't something wrong with me. This is my growth and what's possible. That comes through energetically. Like, people can feel it. They pick up on it.
I agree wholeheartedly. And you should be conscious about that. That's another thing I talk about is tone and understanding who you are, who your business is, and trying to be the most authentic self possible, because you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be super jovial or boisterous. But when people have a chance to see the real authentic you, and that may mean being vulnerable and talking about things that may not make you super comfortable, that is where you build the strongest relationships. Because as I go back to the personal brand thing, we don't connect with businesses on a human level. We connect with people.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, and I ask this question on stage a lot, is, name a brand that you feel intimately connected with. And I've heard a few examples that are good, like Patagonia, Apple. But at the end of the day, when I ask why, it's, well, I like a mission that they have, or I like the products are simple. Okay, quality, good. But are you really connected with the business, or do you just like an initiative? Do you like the product more than the competitors? And that's typically what it comes down to. So when I ask, okay, think of a person from a business that you're like, I support that business because of X. And like, oh, well, local restaurant, local bar, local salon, local spa. I know the owner, I know the manager. So, okay, so because they've treated you so well, because you've gotten to know them on a personal level, you go there. I said, what if the service is like, not the best, but, just good, or maybe a little above average? Well, yeah, I wouldn't go anywhere else because I'm so connected with Joe or Susie or Tommy. That's the reason, because of their personal brand and because they've been vulnerable. They've built a relationship with you. Doesn't mean they're perfect, doesn't mean the business is perfect, but you still go back because of that relationship. And that's what makes business great. And oh, by the way, that is the number one foundation of sales, is relationships. People buy based on relationships. And let's just take, for example, anything that you can impulse purchase on the internet, but service-based, software-based, people buy based on relationships. And so part of that is being vulnerable, being visible, being out there, being vocal. But if you're invisible, how can you have any of that? And the answer is you can't.
You can't, I know. Well, I mean, I think as a humanity, we're still pretty addicted to the rags to riches stories, the suffering to thriving stories. There's something about that in our psyche that we're still addicted to. And it's kind of unfortunate, because what if you didn't suffer and struggle and you're doing well now? Then do you not have a story to tell? I mean, I think what we need to kind of do here is sort of shift our awareness to, what is this person creating now that's giving great results, not how hard was it for them before they got here, So I think we're changing that too, where we can be open, we can be ourselves, we can be vulnerable, but we don't have to come out of like the pits of hell in order to earn it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And to be able to tell the now story, like, what are you doing now? Well, now I'm creating my life to become this, and then feed off of that. I mean, what is more important to me than how hard someone had it and how they overcame it is actually, well, where are you going? I don't need to know where you've been. I want to know where you're going and how's that working for you? Because if it's working, I want to learn from you. Because I might be going a similar direction, or at least I might be going to a similar height or a similar velocity, and it's like, okay, how's that working? And what can you share with me?
Yeah. I think one of the things you're talking about is vision. And so often when I talk to people, especially when I'm doing one-to-one coaching, is I'll ask the question is, what is your vision? I'll often hear things like, well, I want more downloads of my podcast. I want more website visitors. I want more sales. And my response to that, and that's almost the answer every single time.
Sure.
And my answer is, are you just making that up on the fly? And when they're called out like that, they say, oh, well, no, I got it all in my head, right? Well, that's not a strategy. That's not a plan. That's hoping and praying. And a vision to me, a crystal clear vision, more importantly, would be a statement you could make in maybe 2 or 3 sentences tops that indicates the outcome that you're looking for. So whether it be the outcome you want for your business this year, like I want to serve 250 clients across the Midwest by social media management, whatever it might be, and then how you're going to do it. So when you become, as an entrepreneur, as a podcaster or author, whoever it might be, when you become vocal with what you're trying to do, people tend to rally behind it. And they tend to say, yeah, I want to support that individual, right? So I would often tell people, look, a year ago, I started a journey of building my own personal brand. And I would tell people that I am using myself as a bit of a guinea pig by posting and using my podcast. And I ultimately want to be a public speaker, and I want to get paid to do 10 to 15 keynotes a year. And I'm working on publishing my 2nd and 3rd book at the moment. And I hope that gets me to a position where, I don't have to do daily agency work, or I can work with high-level clients one-to-one and be very selective. That's my personal goal. That's what a vision looks like for me within the next calendar year. And I hope that when people say, well, this Chris guy, he is speaking on stages, he's on a lot of podcasts, and, I want to work with him. I want to learn about that. And he is vulnerable. He does open up and talk about some of his challenges too. I just become a little bit more personable. So I hope, and not arrogant, I hope. And that people as a byproduct say, he's added so much value to my news feed and added so much value through his podcast that as a byproduct, I'm going to look him up. I'm going to check out what his services cost, and I'm going to send him an email for a quote. And that's how the tables turn for a lot of us is in the last 3 to 4 years. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, which is where I'm most active, I have not actively sold my services one time in a post. And a lot of people say, well, why would that be? And the answer is nobody likes to consume ads. Nobody wants to be sold to unless they're openly asking for a sales pitch, which doesn't happen a lot. So I sell by indirectly selling. Like I said before, I try to add so much value to your newsfeed or to your ears through a podcast or through video content that I demonstrate thought leadership content, trust, authority, and what I call social currency, which is just social proof. So examples that I have paying clients that actually like me. And all of that creates this brand, my personal brand, which says Chris is knowledgeable, he's trustworthy, he's credible, he's good at what he does. And if you're interested in digital marketing consulting or strategy, this is the person I'm going to call when I'm ready. And so that's kind of what's starting to happen in my personal life. I'm not lighting the world on fire, at least not yet. And it's a journey like we talked about. And I think that if you're able to do a lot of these things, but also by being very patient, because it takes time. It's a lot of podcasts and a lot of interviews.
Well, it's a gestation period. I mean, you have to
we're all planting seeds.
It to unfold. And if you're not allowing it to unfold, I do these little experiments every once in a while just to remind myself what it really takes to grow something from nothing. Because essentially that's what we're talking about.
Sure.
We're talking about taking an idea, which is just like an internal awareness, and turning it into a physical form. We're building from thought. And so what I do occasionally throughout the year, maybe a couple times, is I'll go buy seeds for flowers or whatever, and I'll start the seeds and I'll sprout them, and then I'll add them into a little bit of dirt just for getting them going, and then I'll keep moving them into bigger pots and to see what I can turn them into. And it's essentially a mind game where I'm starting out with these seeds that are an idea. and I lay them in paper towel and sprinkle them with water, and pretty soon they get a little sprout on them. And then I put them into a small little dish, and then they outgrow the dish. And the more you outgrow the dish is just like a great metaphor for your mind, right? Keep expanding your mind and let your experiences and what you're putting out to the world and your offerings expand your mind and let it grow. And I'm telling you, it's just nurturing these little seeds from nothing into these big plants. It's the best way to remind myself that everything has a gestation period.
You're right.
And you can't rush it.
My son's football team uses a motto called "Water It," and it goes back to bamboo. And I'm not great at telling this story because I've only heard it one time. But basically, there's a story of a bamboo farmer, and he's watering his garden. And after, let's just call it the first year, the neighbor walks by and says, why are you still doing this? And he's like, well, it's bamboo. It's going to grow really tall and strong. And they're like, oh, okay. The guy walks away and kind of thinks he's crazy. And another year goes by, and he sees his neighbor watering his bamboo every single day. And he's like, aren't you ready to just give up on the bamboo? He's like, no, I'm not. And then third year goes by, he starts watering the bamboo. And the guy's like, I'm surprised you haven't given up on it. He's like, any day now, this bamboo will grow very tall and very strong. And bamboo grows very quickly once it starts to cultivate. And sure enough, just like a freshman or sophomore going through a couple years of training and strength conditioning for any sport, so you start to see them grow. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, boom, massive growth, leadership, strength, speed, agility, all these wonderful things you want in an athlete. And then going from that third to fourth year, the bamboo just takes off and grows something like 8 feet in a matter of, I think it's a couple of days or a couple of weeks. And that exactly is right when you talk about the gestation period. Is it's patience. You have to continually water it and have patience at the same time. Yeah, faith.
Trust. Yeah,
absolutely.
I know I grew up a farm kid, and when we would plant the seeds in the spring, we never doubted that the wheat seeds we were planting, which would be wheat, like we didn't wonder if they'd turn into corn. So this is a big lesson, I think, that I brought from my childhood into my business. It's like, yeah, of course, this thought is an idea, it's a seed, and of course it's going to grow. And then there has to be that awareness that, of course, this idea is good, and of course it's going to blossom into something. But we're going over time, so
that's okay.
Tell us how people can reach you.
Yeah. So, if you're interested in anything I had to say, I'm pretty active and visible all over the internet. My personal website is iamchrisburns.com. If you're interested in any of the marketing services, my agency is luxlevelmedia.com. Otherwise, just as an individual, I'm on all kinds of social media platforms. LinkedIn, which is LinkedIn/Chris B. Burns, 2 B's in the middle there. I'm on YouTube and TikTok for my podcast, which is Hustle Nation Podcast. And it's just a leadership and business podcast where we interview leaders from all over the globe, from all walks of life, about all kinds of fun subjects. And we post 3 to 4 daily videos, clips from the show. So Hustle Nation Podcast on all platforms. And I'd love if you were to give a listen.
That'd be
Thanks
awesome.
for having me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, my pleasure. I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining
Stuff like
me.
this, though, makes me feel better. It kind of gets me energized.
Perks you up, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. No, I think you gave some really good and valuable tips and tools today, and it was wonderful having a conversation with you. So thank you for being here. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
And enjoy the rest of your summer. And remember, everyone, stay aligned, stay alert, and stay awake.